All right. Well, we are very excited about today's tasting. It's been a long time coming. We've been waiting on this one for a couple months. We were supposed to do this one back in the fall, and we had to postpone it. So we're very excited to be doing this one. Before we get into that, just a couple quick updates from the foundation. My name is Denise Silverman. I'm the executive director of the Wine and Food Foundation, for those who don't know me. And today's tasting for our Imbibe series is Pinot Noir and Chardonnay from around the world, sponsored by HEB. Before we get started and before I introduce our hosts, we're going to give you a couple quick updates about some things coming up with the foundation. As most of you know, I think we have increased our Imbibe schedule. We're now doing these sessions weekly, and they alternate Wednesdays and Thursdays. So just keep an eye on the website and of course on our email blasts and social media so you can sort of remember which is, when we're alternating. And we may switch things up from time to time based on scheduling conflicts. So just, again, we're going to try to keep it to Wednesdays and Thursdays, but it might not always be exactly alternating. And I'll be mentioning one of those here coming up. So next week, we're doing Thursday, February 4th, and that will be a lesson in Grenache with our friend Randy Hester from C.S.W. And possibly a co-host. We're waiting on confirming. So registration for that class is open, and it's very popular, so be sure to sign up soon. The following week is Wednesday, February 10th, and that class is called Yin and Yang, a regional head-to-head of two classic grapes. I'm very excited for this one. So we're doing head-to-head comparisons of two Sangioveses and two dry Rieslings. So that should be very fun. So definitely sign up for that one. And that's hosted by our friend Mark Rayshap. So I'm sure that one will be very popular too. And then Wednesday, February 17th, so that's two back-to-back Wednesdays, just so you're aware, is a new class. We haven't posted it yet, but it should be up soon, called Old School Natural Wines. So that's a new topic for us, and we're a new topic about old school. And that's hosted by Patrick Olds from McGuire Mormon and Tony Schlattauer from Jeffries. So that one should open up on registration very soon. Other than that, we are working on some other types of events that we will be keeping you posted on. We are trying to do some very COVID compliant, small outdoor events, probably more towards the spring timeframe. Obviously, we will be keeping ourselves aware of what's happening in the environment and making sure that it's a good time to be doing things like that and that people are interested. As you know, and as I've mentioned before, we've gotten some really good feedback about wanting to do outdoor COVID compliant events, smaller events. So we are looking into that, and we'll keep you posted. And then just a reminder that we have locked in our date for this year's Rare and Fine Wine Auction, and that's going to be Saturday, November 6th at the JW Marriott. So mark your calendars for that. And also Hugh Davies from Schramsberg has signed on to be our featured winemaker again. So we're very excited about that. Let's see. Let's say hello to my colleague, Hillary Weldy, our Senior Director of Events, who puts these events together for us. We have a couple board members here tonight. Pat Conroy is here, and Sansi Chin is here. And we have a new board member, Sergio is here, welcome. And then we have another board member who I'm going to talk about in just a second. We're coming to the end of dry January, thankfully. So we still have a fairly intimate group tonight, which is nice too, because I think it's fine to sort of open up your mics and just, you don't have to stay on mute if you want to chime in with a question. But we are seeing, like I said, a big increase in registration for February. So I really think this dry January was just kind of, it affected us. So I don't understand it, but I guess that's what some people do. So with that, let's go ahead and get to the tasting. I would like to introduce Joelle Cousins, Certified Sommelier and Chain Account Manager with RNDC. And you may recognize Joelle because she's done some tastings with us before. And she also did our our broadcasted session at Nourish the Soul this past fall. She did a wine tasting for us for Nourish the Soul. So I'm sure you are familiar with her. And in addition to all of that amazingness, we are super excited because Joelle is joining our board this year. So Joelle is a new director on our board of directors, and we're super excited to have all of her talent and contributions as a member of our board. So congratulations and welcome. And we also have with us Chris Hurst, the beer and wine manager for HEB. As I mentioned, this session is sponsored by HEB, and we have a whole bunch of our friends from HEB on the line tonight. So welcome, Mino and Karen and Alan. Thank you all for coming. And thank you, of course, to our members for being here. So I think that covers everything. So Joelle, I'll turn it over to you to get started.
Great. Thank you so much, Denise. And hello, everyone. Nice to see all of you. Some familiar faces here, and I'm super excited to join the board and help any way I can. I'm so pleased with everything that y'all have done to pivot during this last year, especially with giving back to the restaurant community and everything like that. So my computer's a little delayed today, so you'll see me lagging on screen, but hopefully you can hear me just fine on my phone here. So bear with the frozen faces. I am smiling at all of you and smelling wine. So yeah, so excited to talk about Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. When it comes to Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, these two grapes are such interesting, complex subjects. And you can just kind of go on and on about the talking points about both of the varieties and everywhere that they are grown. So I am curious, what I see some good glassware out. I always recommend with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir and their aromatics, a big bowl for the glass. So I'm drinking out of a Riedel Pinot Noir glass specifically, but it's got a really nice bulb, and that kind of helps with the aromatics out there. So I see some of you guys have some great glassware there, but it's the little things, you know, the nuance here. So just a recommendation when it comes to Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. But yeah, I think what makes these grapes so interesting is they're very old. So, you know, in terms of timing, I actually don't have the Chardonnay off the top of my head, but with Pinot Noir, for example, I mean, it's well over 1,000 years old. And, you know, when you think about Cabernet was really a mutation or a genetic cross that happened in the 1700s. So it's got much less history. And so what we see is high levels of mutation with both Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So it's really cool to see kind of all the different, and you'll see, we'll kind of talk a little bit about clones. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but I think probably, I know we have a lot of wine enthusiasts on the call, and I think, you know, talking about clones is very buzzworthy when it comes to Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And that is because there are so many. So, you know, with Pinot Noir, there's over 1,000 registered clones, which is just kind of crazy, right? If you're talking about Cabernet, you've got maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5. Don't quote me on that, but it's not a lot. So, so with those clones, you know, you find all kinds of adaptations that have happened based on climate and terroir. So where the grape is grown is really important. You know, is it grown in Burgundy where they have a lot of moisture or you know, hail threat or whatever, what have you? And so does it need to be a kind of humidity resistant clone? Is it grown at a higher elevation where you maybe see a lot of wind and things like that? And then maybe those clones will have like a thicker skin just as a defense mechanism. So they tend to be more tannic. And so when you talk about it at the end of the day, you don't see a lot of single clone expressions with these wines because most winemakers believe that the blend is really the art of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So, you know, I think that there's a lot to be said about the winemaking aspect there as well, and the talent that is required to work with these clones. So just lots of fun, geeky stuff to dig into when it comes to Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Both the grape varieties originate in Burgundy. So the Mecca. And so, you know, and Chardonnay originates in the village of Chardonnay in the Macon. So in the Macon region of Burgundy. So the first wine that we're having tonight, the Chanson Vieux Classé, that is a wine from a little village called Vieux Classé in the Macon region of Burgundy. And so I thought that was an appropriate place to start, seeing it is where Chardonnay originates. So, you know, we see, and then with Pinot Noir, you know, we've got, again, that amazing history, and with its clonal expression, you've got all of the Pinots that you know of. So Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Meunier, and there's several others, are actually all clones of the same Pinot. So it's really come a long way. And I think we're going to find tonight, we'll do all different appellations of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and it'll just be really fun to compare. And I always encourage people to, when you see a new appellation that you haven't tried, maybe necessarily, or like of Pinot Noir, for example, you find a New Zealand Pinot Noir, or actually, there's a new one from Washington, a single vineyard that Charles Smith is producing called Golden West Vineyard. Always interested to try that stuff, because again, you really get an interesting expression depending on where you are, and they're so expressive based on the terroir. So that's my rant about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but very excited to be talking about these two great varieties. So talking about Chanson, again, originates in the Macon. Chris, did you want to take it away on Chanson as a winery? Pretty exciting place.
For sure. Like, it's a crazy good region, obviously coming from where this wine's coming from, but the winery itself dates back to 1750. It's one of only 6 in the region left over from there, from the 18th century. Only 6 producers can date back that far. So it's crazy old history, great pedigree, and that kind of stuff. And actually in 2017, this winery actually had 3 of its wines get the Wine of the Year certification from multiple different French critics. And to get that in France from French critics says a lot. Currently, they're producing around, last numbers I have is from 2017, they were producing about 17,000 cases annually, which is relatively small. Really, really small winemaking. Love these wines. And they really define their wines by their aromatics to me. First time when I tried this wine, that's the first thing that popped out to me. It's just, you get this beautiful hit of citrus right on the nose. Would you all agree with that?
I see some heads nodding. Yeah,
Okay.
some people chewing and drinking. This is good. I think you're absolutely right, Chris. So one thing that's really cool about the wine is, and the aromatic note absolutely nailed it. They actually use Chardonnay Muscadet clone. So anytime you see they use Chardonnay, regular Chardonnay, with probably a mix of clones like Dijon and some others, Winty maybe. But they use Chardonnay Muscadet. So anytime you see Muscadet on the end of a clone name or end of a grape variety name, so the other place you see it is Sauvignon Blanc. You'll see Sauvignon Blanc Muscadet. And that indicates that it is a highly aromatic kind of floral expression of the grape. So very unique to see this with Chardonnay, though. I think it's such an interesting nod to what they're doing at this winery to kind of maintain the history. So you do get that that floral aromatic, and that is coming from that clone. So just a fun, interesting way to express Chardonnay. Yeah, and like Chris said, the winery history is incredible, and their production is really small. That includes all of their Premier Cru and productions as well. They are located in Beaune, in Burgundy, and so they have a beautiful winery there. I've never been, but I gotta go. So it's top of the list.
It'd be a beautiful place to visit, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, I've heard good things. So, and I think they're actually at this point owned by the Bollinger family, and that group, and so they've been able to pump a lot of new life into the winery to preserve these traditions. Because I mean, with a history that long, again, that requires a lot of attention, and they've been able to really enhance all of their winemaking and viticulture practices with that funding without changing.
Yeah. So the winery itself actually, for a while, fell into disrepair until 1999. It was fully restored. I'm probably when Bollinger bought it, and the winery to this day now looks amazing. I was looking at some of the pictures earlier today, and it's a beautiful, beautiful winery. Definitely one to have on the list to visit at some point.
Yeah, I was trying to decide which background to use today. I'm actually currently in the Toomey Last Stop Vineyard in Russian River Valley because I wanted to be in a vineyard, but this Chanson Winery was a close second. But yeah, so again, this is an interesting expression with Chardonnay and Chardonnay Muscatet. The other thing about Chanson is they do all of their wines the same way. So all of their winemaking across every wine that they make is going to be the same, and they do hand harvesting. They do a 100% whole cluster. So that is to enhance the structure of the wine and the complexity. So at the end of the day, you have a very terroir driven wine. They're using, very neutral, moderate oak. So you can tell that this is a mineral driven wine, citrusy, floral, and then has that kind of a salty finish almost, which I think is really pleasing when it comes to food pairing, especially. Could go really well with your charcuterie and whatnot. And then the other thing that I think is really fun about their vineyards is that it's limestone soils and clay, which is really what Chardonnay prefers. But they also have oyster fossils in their soils, which is something you do find in Burgundy. And I just find it so romantic, the idea of the pairing of oysters and Chardonnay. And I think this wine is divine with a plate full of oysters. And so, just really interesting little spot. So yeah, that's the Vieux Classé.
Yeah. And then for me, just on food pairings, I'm a big New Orleans fan. I go there quite often. And for some reason, when I tried this wine, first thing I thought is a crawfish boil sitting outside in the bayou.
Yum.
The first thing I thought about.
That idea.
I thought it'd be a great pairing with that.
Absolutely. Just one last note on the Macon region of Burgundy too. So, Santi's got a friend joining the tasting. See the dog popping in and out. Very fun. So Macon, as of 2020, has approved Premier Cru Climats, 22 new Premier Crus in Burgundy. So this is huge. There's only been Premier Crus in the Côte de Nuit and the Côte de Beaune. So for a very, very long time. And so this was a long time coming, and they had been discussing it, and you may have heard buzz about it. We won't see the wines in the market until probably 2021 or later this year or next year. But definitely Macon is a cool little area that is approachable price point. You get the beautiful wines of Burgundy, and they're really starting to get a lot of attention. And so that's just something to keep an eye out for sure. But yeah, that's the root of Chardonnay right there from the Macon for you. So, of course, we had to then move into a California Chardonnay. You just have to see the comparison side by side. I think it's so important to do these comparisons and understand how terroir and winemaking really affects these wines. So moving into the Hess Collection Winery, this is a brand new production for them. It's only a 750 case production, so super tiny, and really excited to share it with you guys. But this is your Napa Chardonnay. So we're into a much different expression of Chardonnay with this, and with Chardonnay, it is a neutral grape variety. I think on the last wine, the Muscatet aspect of it gives it more floral aspect and complexity. But overall, it's generally, we call it neutral. So it doesn't pop out of the glass like Sauvignon Blanc does, right? Sauvignon Blanc kind of hits you in the face with a bunch of aromatics. Chardonnay tends to be more neutral. But it does have very unique expressions ranging from citrus only minerals to tropical fruits, and then everything in between, honestly. So you've got apples and peaches, and it really depends on where it's from. So once you get over, we're taking a big pendulum swing over to Napa here, where you get a very tropical expression. some of that pineapple, some of that baked apple pie. And then of course, traditionally what you see in Napa is that oak usage, and it does just go so well with that riper fruit style that you get out of Napa. So this is coming from the cooler parts of Napa Valley, which are the southern area of Napa Valley. So that those are going to be your coolest climates within the Napa Valley, and that's where these grapes are coming from. And it's 100% malolactic fermentation and 9 months and 30% new French oak. So you're really getting those vanilla butterscotch kind of nutmeg spicy tones along with that tropical fruit. So I am a lover of all versions of Chardonnay, and I did a huge part of my career in steakhouses, and Napa Valley, California Chardonnay is the real winner there. And it's just so opulent and wonderful with lobster, buttery things, crab, those kind of things. And so I think it absolutely has a place at everyone's table. So it's a fun one to explore.
And it's a great way to like compare to the French making of Chardonnay and just that big and roundness of it that you get with this. And then coming from Hess, which is founded in 1978 by Donald Hess, kind of right on the heels of the Paris tasting, right as Napa was starting to get some really buzz. So starting in 1978, over a few years, he bought almost 900 acres around Mount Veeder area, and really started developing the vineyards around 1982, really figuring out what he wanted to do. And Donald Hess was a big lover of nature. He loved the outdoors, he loved nature and that kind of stuff. So his winery actually had a mantra of nurture the land and return what you take, which is obviously great. It makes it very sustainable. And they've actually been one of the big leading pioneers in the sustainable wine making here in the United States. For instance, they actually hosted the first natural farming symposium for the United States vineyards, first guys to ever do it. And in 2002, they actually helped develop the Wine Institute's Code for Sustainable Winemaking. And so it's been a big passion of theirs to like really take care of the land, which is honestly ahead of its time for being back in the early 80s.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the history is really cool. So what he found, they're actually in the old Christian Brothers winery, and it was all restored. So Christian Brothers, if you know about Napa history, goes back to the 1930s, actually, just right after Prohibition. And so really unique historical spot with a lot of history. I have not been to this winery, but one thing is also true about Donald, and that is that he is a huge art collector. So he's been collecting art since the 1960s, and they actually have a beautiful, like, state-of-the-art art museum in the winery. So get on their website, poke around, check it out if you're a lover of art. I think there's always a crossover of art lovers and wine lovers, right? So I definitely wanted to make mention of that, and it is also on my bucket list of places to go see, and just appreciate the art and the collection that he has amassed over the years, because it's a 40-year collection at this point. So yeah, so very, very nice. And then their winemaker, Allison Rodriguez, is also fantastic. So an incredible female winemaker. She got her degree in viticulture and enology from Geisenheim in the Rheingau in Germany. So she did it there, and she was able to work with a lot of different cultures of people and really soak all of that up. And then she ended up coming back, and she has an amazing resume. I mean, she worked for Gallo, she worked for Acacia, making their Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays. So she really got a lot of good experience with those two great varieties. And then Sterling and Behringer. So some really big names. Her resume is incredible, and she's just such a delight. So she does come to the market sometimes and do events with retailers like HEB. But, of course, with the travel bans, we haven't seen her in a while, but I know she'll be back. And she's just an incredible personality, but a really, really talented winemaker as well. So, yeah, so that's Hess. So Napa Chardonnay. What do you guys think? So show of hands, who prefers French Chardonnay? Hillary. Okay, I'm gonna raise my hand. I always go to French Chardonnay. I told you I like it all, though. I do not discriminate. I see another hand go up. Okay, who prefers California Chardonnay? You have to vote. Okay. All right. I like it. Yeah. They both have a place, y'all. And there's so much in between. And if I had all the time in the world, I would definitely be including Australia in this conversation. Australian Chardonnay from Margaret River is absolutely amazing. It's really almost an in-between between France and California, in the sense that it has this incredible acidity, but it has these beautiful tropical flavors and takes oak really well also. So it's kind of, I actually would probably almost go towards Australia at this point, but France is a standby, Chablis, all that kind of stuff. So awesome. So that's Chardonnay, or two of them at least. And moving into the Pinot Noirs, we've got a range of appellations here. So we're going to do French first, then the Willamette Valley, and then into the Russian River Valley. So we're actually moving through some different climate zones, kind of starting with the coolest climate and moving to the warmest climate. Although I will say all of these climates are cool. And I think when it comes to winemaking in the new world versus the old world and viticulture, the microclimates that you're able to find even within California really are, it's incredible the diversity that you see. So some parts of Sonoma are obviously much warmer than others. So starting with the Bourgogne, we're going super traditional again, because really wanted to show the range. So this is Girardin, Saint Vincent, Bourgogne Rouge. And I think this expression is incredibly classic in the sense that it is, you can see through it. It's very light color. These are coming from 45-year-old vines, and mainly in the Côte de Beaune. So it's labeled Bourgogne Rouge because there's some, outlying appellations, but it's a really small producer. So their access to vines is very much centralized in the Côte de Beaune area of Burgundy. All hand harvested. They do partial destemming, so it's not 100% whole cluster, not 100% destemmed, but what you get is some really nice variation depending on the vintage. When producers choose to include stems or not, a lot of that is vintage dependent, because sometimes the stems actually have ripeness levels too. So sometimes the stems are really ripe and sometimes they're really green, and it does depend on the vintage. And you don't want to put a bunch of very green stems into the wine because it will then taste green and bitter. But when they're ripe, they do provide some really nice structure and balance to the acidity. So in terms of destemming, they're very much on the vintage dependent side. They use natural yeast. They use 500-liter barrels with just a very small percentage of new oak. And so they use those really big barrels. So you're not really getting a bunch of flavor imparted into the wine from the barrel. You're really just getting that kind of micro oxygenation, that softening of the acidity and the tannins that's desired on a French Pinot Noir. So they do that for 10 months, and then they do bottle according to the biodynamic calendar. So they bottle on fruit days. And I was, just noticing, like, wines, I don't know if anybody else is having this experience, but wine is smelling really good tonight. It's one of those things, I never look at the calendar unless I think, okay, everything smells really bad today, or everything smells really, really good today. Today it is smelling super aromatic, and we're dealing with aromatic varieties. And so I'm so pleased that they're not, closed up, and they're very expressive. Interestingly, it was a fruit day until like 4 or something, and now it's a leaf day. So it changes actually based on the time. So it's not just like, it's like as of 3 or 4 p.m. today, it switched from a fruit day to a leaf day. So, it's all up in the air. I think we've talked about this with some people in this group before, but when it comes to the vineyard, I think that's where most winemakers say, that's where we believe in the biodynamic calendars. When it comes to our decisions on picking and on bottling, we are going to think about the biodynamic calendar and the lunar cycle. And so again, these Vincent Girardin picks on fruit days to bottle the wine. So very old school, very traditional style of Pinot Noir. Lots of kind of like that rhubarb, a little bit of that more tart fruit, strawberry kind of cherry flavor, but the fruit finishes tart. And I think you'll see a progression as we go through, of fruit starting to finish a little bit riper. But this is a very traditional style.
Yeah, this wine I actually love. This was actually on my dinner table for Thanksgiving this past year.
Okay.
Love this wine. And then just over delivers for the price like crazy. It's really great pedigree. So the winery itself was actually founded in 1980, compared to the rest of the region, a little younger. And then Vincent actually founded this winery when he was 19, after inheriting 5 acres from his parents, and focused pretty much just on whatever he could get to work at the beginning of it. And as it grew, as it got more popular, he really started taking off and couldn't get enough yield out of his property. So he ended up actually doing something that was kind of new for Burgundy at the time, and he started to cope with demand. He started developing an approach that was new to Burgundy at the time, and that was to purchase grapes from producers who shared his same growing philosophy and high standards that he strived for. And basically the thing that every winemaker wants to, just high demand for their wines and not being able to keep up. And then actually in 2012, sold it to his partner, John Pierre. But like I said, I love Pinot Noir from this region. This is actually one of my favorites. Probably my favorite region for Pinot Noir, actually. Love this wine. And then you're right, the cherry notes on here to me are the most pronounced, and quite a bit of like good earthy finish to it as well, like almost like forest floor kind of flavors. That's what I get on the finish of it. And then being in Texas, being a hunter myself, the first thing I think about when I try this wine is game meats. Like this and venison, to me, like I don't know how many people on here have had chicken fried venison steaks before, but this would be perfect with it. It is absolutely, it'd be a great pairing. And then things like just lamb would be another real good one for me. Like, how is this not being served in every Brazilian steakhouse when they have lamb on the rack? Like, this would be a perfect pairing for that.
I love the chicken fried venison, mainly because I agree with you. The game flavors, I think, work really nicely with Pinot Noir in general, but really Burgundian Pinot Noir as well. But the fried foods with Pinot should not be overlooked because of the acidity that you get there. So that acidity works really nicely with fried foods. So yeah, I could not agree more with that. That is a great idea. And then also mushrooms. Like if you're not big into meat, if you're not a huge meat eater, anything portobello mushrooms, any kind of mushroom dish, really, really yummy. And I almost pick up on some of those notes in the wine also. So it's very complementary, kind of that earthiness that Chris mentioned. But yeah, I think very good options with this one. And again, the price point is killer. Even your entry-level Burgundies are coming in higher and higher and higher every year. And a big part of that is viticultural hazards. So Burgundy often suffers hails, major crop disturbances. And so I think this is such a tiny producer. Like Chris said, his family's actually been there in Santenay for many generations, but he's branched out on his own. And part of that ability to create a wine every vintage is with those partnerships that he has with other growers, like Chris mentioned. So that keeps the price point in a place where it can be much more accessible for the general public, which is awesome. So yeah.
And like I said, this was on my table for Thanksgiving this past year. Like this and turkey works well. This and ham, like a good old glazed baked ham, works well. But I'm telling you, if you haven't tried chicken fried venison, you need to. It's something to change your life.
I'm into it. I'm super into it. So moving into the Ken Wright. Who has heard of Ken Wright on this call? I feel like he's super famous, but I don't know if anybody else knows him. Okay, Sansi has. Hillary has. Ken Wright is actually, he was the first Oregon winemaker to ever make it on the cover of Wine Spectator. And that was in 2014. And they named him the King of Oregon Pinot Noir or something like that. Some kind of fabulous title. But he is known for single vineyard Pinot Noirs. So he's had a line of very high-end Pinot Noirs from the Willamette Valley and all of its different sub-appellations. And so this wine is a Willamette Valley bottling. So this wine has really is a little bit newer. So I'm trying to think of when it actually came out. It was probably at least 10 years ago. But in regards to Ken's history, most of his history has been producing these really fabulous site-specific single vineyard Pinot Noirs. The Willamette Valley is so great. It's at the 45th parallel. It is a very cool climate. However, it is cradled on both sides by mountains. So you've got the Cascade Mountains on the eastern side and the coastal range on the western side. So it does have a continental climate in most of the vineyards. So when you think of Oregon, I think my mind automatically goes to Portland and it's like, okay, very, very rainy. The growing region there is actually very sunny, but the diurnal shift, and that's the temperature shift from day to night, is huge because of how far north it is. So you get that super cold night that maintains all of that beautiful acidity and fresh fruit on the vines, and then the sunlight during the day to ripen and have these wonderful fruit flavors as well. So anyways, the Willamette Valley has 6 different sub-appellations, and those appellations are all very unique in their soil profiles. That has very well-defined soil profiles. So some soil profiles and regions are better defined than others, right? And we talk about them sometimes, and then other times it's less important. But it really contributes to everything we kind of talked about at the beginning with the expression of Pinot Noir based on where it's grown. And so you've got volcanic soils, you have marine soils, you've got all kinds of cool stuff. So with this wine, he's really taking wines from single vineyards that he works with and combining them to make a true representation of the Willamette Valley as a whole in all of its glory. So he usually uses about 6 to 8 different vineyards for this wine. And he uses 100% stainless steel and really wants to maintain the delicacy of the grape variety and the place that it's coming from. So yeah, very, very cool place. He's in Yamhill Carlton. He also helped write the Yamhill Carlton AVA. So he really, I mean, he's instrumental in the region and has done so much for everybody as a community, which is one really fun thing about Oregon. I think a lot of, and California too, you know, I think the New World has a kind of mentality of camaraderie within these regions, but the Willamette Valley is just so small that, you know, they really collaborate and join forces. And so he was huge for that. But yeah, this is the Ken Wright. I think it's, yeah, easy drinking, but that really pure fruit that you get off of it.
I mean, when it comes to Willamette Valley, I would say there's probably no one more important than Ken Wright. I mean, the things he's done for it, like you said, and he wrote the Yamhill Carlton AVA application and served as their first president, and then just actually overall helped create all 6 AVAs for the Willamette Valley. He was instrumental in every part of it. And then, as you said, in 2014, that he got I think it was the title was, yeah. I got it written here. His title was Master of Pinot Noir in Oregon.
Okay, that's what it was.
Great title, obviously. I would like to be the master of Pinot Noir. That'd be nice. And then actually of his 2012 Abbott Claim Vineyard Pinot Noir was actually ranked by Wine Enthusiasts #1 wine in the world that year. So these wines are no joke. These are absolutely amazing wines and a great representation for Pinot Noir from Oregon, which in my mind is just getting better and better. It seems every year I'm getting something better and better from Oregon as a whole. And the stuff is great. On this one, I'm getting what I usually don't get on this one. What I usually don't get from this region is I'm getting fresh strawberry on this wine and quite a bit of lavender. Actually, quite a bit of lavender. I don't know if anyone agrees with me on that one, but lavender is like the big punch at the end of the aromas on this one for me. And it's delicious, absolutely delicious.
Yeah, I think the floral aspect of Pinot Noir sometimes it's more expressive in some places than others. And I think the Willamette Valley absolutely always has that floral note and the spice note. It always has a kind of a backbone of spice for me. There's an earthiness there, but it is very, it's almost like a Earl Grey tea or a black tea kind of sensation that I almost always pinpoint when I'm even blind tasting. I'm like, oh, there's the Earl Grey tea. I think it might be Willamette Valley. And that's just a marker for me. But yeah, the Ken Wright is such a cool guy. They also have not used real cork since 2000. So for like 20 years, they've used, it's called Noma cork, but it's completely plant-based. So it's actually made 100% of sugarcane, which is really cool. And it's 100% recyclable, zero carbon footprint. And Ken really believes that what cork can do is it actually does strip aromas and flavors from the wine. And so he's passionate about using these particular corks and the sustainability aspect of them. The other thing is, and I know not all of you have the wine, but it is a showpiece. So it's not going to show. I'm like, okay, let me put it in front of my face. The bottle and the label is really beautiful. So it used to be just kind of a simple text label, and it did get a makeover. These are all native species in the Willamette Valley. This was a commissioned art piece that he had done. It's actually made of beeswax entirely. And this is a photo of that beeswax artwork, but it's got birds and flora and fauna and all the species that are native there. And so really beautiful label and a beautiful story, beautiful wine. So yeah, Willamette Valley, consistently one of my most favorite places for Pinot Noir always, and very, very food friendly as well. It really bridges the gap, I think, in ripeness level. And so, yeah, so that's Ken Wright. So I'm happy to introduce that wine to you guys. This wine actually is newly available retail. So it really was never available retail before. So I am not fully surprised that you haven't maybe seen it before. But it's something to look out for now, because it is newly made available to select retailers. But you might see some of his single vineyard things written up in Wine Spectator and some other places as well. So
if you ever get the chance to get out to Ken Wright, they actually have one of the most interesting tasting rooms. It's actually a converted 1920s train station for Carleton. And you look at some of the pictures of it, and it's just super cool, super unique. They still have a railroad right behind it that goes by. It's stunning.
Nice. All right. So we are moving into California. Finally, I've had California on my mind all day today, which is why I am sitting in the Last Stop Vineyard, which is what we're going to be talking about for the Russian River Valley. And this is Toomey. So you may or may not be familiar with Toomey. On the back of the bottle, it does say the family of Silver Oak. So I'm pretty sure most people on the call have heard of Silver Oak, but maybe not. That is a very successful family winery out of Alexander Valley, by the Duncan family. Well, the Duncan family did decide to go out on a project to make Pinot Noir and Toomey and Merlot and Sauvignon Blanc about 20 years ago. So we're talking about the Russian River Valley at this point. This is a blend of vineyards, but they do have an estate vineyard there, and that's the Last Stop Vineyard. And it is located right at the conjuncture of the Russian River Valley, Green Valley of Russian River Valley, which is a small little subzone within Russian River Valley that's super cool climate and has very distinct soil profile. And so that soil profile is Gold Ridge soils. And Gold Ridge soils are a sandy loam that is really, really great for Pinot Noir. And in this vineyard, it is 100% gold ridge soils. The roots have to dig really, really deep in these soils to get to water and plant. And that creates a much darker, kind of fuller expression of Pinot Noir. And so with this, you're going to find a lot more body, not only because of the vineyard, but also because of the winemaking. But again, this is at the conjuncture of Russian River Valley, that Green Valley of Russian River Valley subzone, and the Sonoma coast. So it's really in a super cool climate part. It's actually the coolest climate part of Russian River Valley, because Russian River is actually pretty big and Sonoma is pretty big. So the climate ranges from a region 1 on the Winkler scale, which is just a geeky scale that indicates average temperature throughout the day. So region 1 is the coolest, region 5 is the warmest. Sonoma ranges from a region 1 to a region 3. So it's a huge range, and you do see Cabernet grown in Sonoma as well as Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So I think it's important to distinguish, where you are and why this vineyard and this place is so great for Pinot Noir. So with the Toomey, they do use a fair amount of new French oak. So it does spend longer time in oak. It spends 14 months in French oak. About 23% is new. So you do get that kind of vanilla and spice aspect, the baking spice aspect in the wine. And then in addition to that kind of darker, riper fruit, you've got a whole different world of Pinot Noir from what we tried kind of at the beginning with the Burgundy. So yeah, this is your classic Sonoma Pinot Noir. So I hope you are enjoying it.
And then these guys also, much like Hess, have focused a lot on sustainability. I believe the winery in Sonoma, didn't it get one of the big certifications for sustainability, Joelle?
So they are I believe they're Napa Green. My computer is leaving me here. I'm going to pop on my video again. There we go. So I believe they're Napa Green certified, but they absolutely, so Silver Oak Winery is Napa Green certified. If Toomey isn't yet, then they are. They also have, a line of Pinot Noir. So the Toomey line, it covers many different appellations and single vineyards. So they will, So Paco knows a lot about Silver Oak and Toomey. So do share. I see some chat happening. Feel free to speak up. He's saying it was the Silver Oak Alexander Valley Winery, and they're making a new winery, or they might have already made it. I haven't been yet, but in Anderson Valley, up in Mendocino. So they have a lot of and some of the, like, this wine was originally produced at Silver Oak, like Paco said, but Napa Green certified, and then they do fish friendly farming as well. And so that's another way that they're sustainable. But yes, they're very much committed to sustainability. They have solar panels in I know at least in their Sauvignon Blanc vineyard. So it's a constant evolution and a constant process, but they're very much committed to sustainability. They use cover crops, integrated pest management, to where they're not using pesticides. That means that they're using other pests to cover the pest problems. So very, very popular way to deal with any kind of pest management. Yeah. So, and I will say that the winemakers as well has got both of his name's Justin, and he got both of his degrees in Burgundy while working at Domaine Favely, which is a really, really highly esteemed Burgundy house. And so then he did travel back to California and ended up at Spring Mountain Vineyard before beginning at Toomey. But we've got several appellations ranging from Santa Maria Valley all the way to Oregon, up to Willamette. And so they produce a lot of different wines. You won't see them much in retail at all. The Russian River Valley is one of the few that you can get. But I would love to do a tasting of all of them, do a lineup and do a side by side. So maybe that's in the future for the foundation. We'll have to give them a call and see what we can finagle.
Yeah, and these guys last year, 2 years ago, celebrated their 20th anniversary in 2019. They were founded in 1999, and they the inaugural, as Paco was saying, the inaugural vintage was actually made at the Silver Oak Napa winery, and this wine. Does anybody else besides me get the big tobacco hit on the back end? Everybody getting that?
I think it's a result of the oak. I do. Yeah. I think that's partially because of the oak and then the terroir, but I do. I think that's like another, it's actually considered a floral characteristic, believe it or not. When we talk about tobacco, we talk about that saying, it's floral, but it just manifests in such a different way than on the previous wine, like with that fresh lavender. So I absolutely think so. I think that's a great description of what's going on.
Yeah. And then for food pairings with this one, this and like your classic filet mignon would be absolutely amazing. Perk tenderloin would be really good. But one I actually love California Pinot Noir with is Thai food. I love it with Thai food. This and a nice curry is great in my mind.
It does have like lots of bold flavors that can stand up to a lot of different cuisines. So it still has the acidity of Pinot Noir to handle any kind of spice, that kind of stuff. But this one in particular, I'm excited. I'm torn between the Toomey and the Ken Wright for my steelhead trout, which is my favorite Pinot Noir fish, actually, is steelhead trout, because it's got that a wonderful fattiness that goes so nicely with a fuller bodied, riper style Pinot Noir. So I think, yeah, food pairing wise, there's lots of options here, but this is definitely a more opulent, richer, riper style of Pinot Noir. And you get the range from red fruit to black fruit on Pinot Noir, depending on where it's coming from. And I think this really does have that kind of black cherry element to it. Whereas, when we started with the Girardin, I feel like that was much more red fruited. So yeah, just fun seeing the spectrum that exists.
And the Toomey, like if there was going to be a wine out of this lineup that I would say this is your steak wine, this would be my choice. It does have that fullness and that oaky finish that really just pairs well with the good classic Texas T-bone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Could a filet mignon, T-bone. Yeah. The Pinot Noir can go with steak as well. So I'm a big fan of breaking the rules when it comes to food and wine pairing. So, go with what you know and what you love. All right. So I can't see any of you now because I'm having technical difficulties, but does anybody have a favorite region? I guess we'll do a show of hands first for Burgundy for Pinot Noir. Okay, I see Chris's hand go up. Anybody else's hand go up? No. Okay, what about Willamette? You have to vote.
We got 3 for Willamette.
3 for Willamette. Okay, cool. And then Sonoma. I know Paco loves Sonoma. Anybody else? Any takers?
We got two. We got 2 for Sonoma.
Okay.
So
all right.
I'd be curious, what was everybody's favorite wine of the night?
And y'all can feel free to take yourselves off mute and just chime in.
Mine was the Hartford, but I didn't have the other wines.
Yeah.
But Hartford is really nice wines.
Those are beautiful wines. Absolutely. Those are some wonderful, kind of in the same style as the Toomey. So in that kind of more opulent, rich, it's got the new oak. I'm very familiar with those wines. Really beautiful stuff. So we have a Sonoma fan over there. Did anybody else have a favorite? Hillary loved the Chanson. Good. That's the traditional Chardonnay. Very fun. All right. Okay, Santi's on board with Chanson. Well, I hope if nothing else, this showed you that there is just an incredible range to be explored when it comes to Chardonnay. And I think that that you should continue to explore other regions beyond the 5 that we looked at today. There's just so many more, especially with the Southern Hemisphere, Chile, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. Germany, believe it or not, has a huge amount of Pinot Noir as well. And so they call it Spätburgunder there. But it's also a beautiful expression. And so anytime you see something, something out of the ordinary, give it a try. And I think you'll be happy that you did. And it's always a fun comparison to do side by sides with these grape varieties. Oh, Alsatian Pinot Noir from Karen. Totally agree. That is very cool. I think that Trimbach does an Alsatian Pinot Noir, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that one is super fun.
And if you haven't had the chance to try German Pinot, it's fantastic. And I absolutely love it. And it's one of those ones that will creep up on you, and bang for your buck is another great, just amazing bottle of wine.
Yeah, very true.
I have a question, Joelle. Why the pairing of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir?
What's that?
Why do the tasting with these 2 varietals, Pinot and Chardonnay?
Oh yeah. So, well, mainly because they originate together. So they have a lot of similarities. So they both come from Burgundy. So that's just really the first and foremost kind of point. But then also, again, with their incredible clonal diversity and diversity of expression based on terroir. So I think they're definitely fun to go together. And when it comes to wine regions, I always like to try their white and red, right? So in Burgundy, it's kind of a no-brainer. You're like, you have Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in Napa Valley. It's usually, I mean, Napa Valley is so diverse, it's hard to put it into a corner. Let's say Bordeaux. So in Bordeaux, it's Sauvignon Blanc, right? And Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot. And then you go to the Loire Valley and you're going to want to try the Chenin Blanc or the Sauvignon Blanc for the whites, and then the Cabernet Franc for the reds. So it's really kind of a regional thing. It's just that these 2 grape varieties have become so international that they have all of these expressions all over the world. So really fun to talk about around the world Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, but knowing that they did both originate in Burgundy. So that's the homeland.
That's great. Thank you. I have another question. How would you differentiate the food pairings for both varietals between Old World and New World? Like, is there a distinction in how you would pair food? And you did kind of touch on this throughout, but I'm just kind of wondering, in general, how would you pair food between Old World and New World for both of these varietals?
For me, it's more of weight of the wine. I think the American ones tend to be a little heavier, and they can really stand up to some of those bigger foods. When it comes to pairing between Old World and New World, particularly with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, that's my approach.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to, it's sort of dependent on winemaking too, right? Because in Burgundy, you've got this beautiful line of acidity and minerality that will pair with lots of different things, but, you know, maybe is a little bit more delicate when it comes to pairing with like heavier meats and things like that. You kind of want to stay on the spectrum of maybe poultry or some of the game meats, and maybe not go quite all the way to, you know, your ribeye with it, like you would a California Pinot Noir. But that being said, your Grand Cru Burgundies and the really, really nice stuff, those are using 100% new French oak. And they do have a lot of nuance in that Burgundian terroir, but they have a lot of winemaking influence as well. And so those wines are going to stand up quite a bit better to your filet mignon and that kind of thing. So, yeah. So question was, does the oak treatment contribute to what Chris is saying? I think I lost my train of thought.
It was about the weight of the wine, like oak treatment compared to what for instance, California does compared to what the French do.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's about the terroir. So I think in places in Burgundy where you get a riper style Pinot Noir, that Pinot Noir is going to handle oak a lot better than your cooler climate where it's not getting as ripe. So Grand Cru sites in Burgundy are the ripest sites in Burgundy. That's why they're Grand Cru. So they're designated as Grand Cru because they get ripe, and that is why they use oak. So it's really all kind of dependent on where it's grown, in terms of how the winemakers treat it, and then how it will pair with your food. But again, these grape varieties pair so nicely with food because of their lack of tannin. And really that's one of the main rules of wine pairing and food pairing that I do kind of try to think about a little bit, in just the sense that the more tannin, the more alcohol you get in a wine, the more difficult it becomes to pair with food. And so with that, you've got great versatility when it comes to Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, which is such a delight. Paco says, is the Pinot the red wine that I drank out of a mug when I was in the army in Germany in 1964? I am dying to know what you had in that mug. I'm dying to know. It very well could have been Pinot Noir, but back then it could have been anything because the regulations were so kind of like all over the place. But more than likely, yes, because if it was from, let me put it this way, if it was from Germany, then yes. So I would say very likely.
It was either Weisswein or Rotwein. That's it. We didn't know what any of
right. Red
right.
or white. Exactly. So yeah, we don't know, but the Germans are pretty particular, and I would say they probably did not. They were probably only using local grapes, and not sourcing outside of there. So I would say Spätburgunder is a very good possibility, which is so fun. So I would love to try that.
If I had
Alan
only
says maybe Lemberger. It could be Lemberger. It could be a blend. It was likely a field blend, honestly, of anything, and it could be a field blend, honestly, of red and white grapes, and it just looked red in the glass because they did a lot of that as well. So super fun to think about the history there. Yeah.
So I want to know, Joelle, is there anything you don't know?
Oh my God, I don't know anything. Nothing at all. No, the more you learn about wine, the more you realize you don't know anything, but it's so fascinating to explore. And I can just go in a rabbit hole for any of these things. And so I'm so excited that y'all joined us tonight to geek out about Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, some of my most favorite topics. Yeah,
this was awesome. It really was a fun, two fun varietals to pair together. Definitely a new one for me. So I really appreciated seeing these two together and learning all about that. And also, again, want to thank HEB for sponsoring tonight. We love the partnership with HEB and all they have to offer. So thank you. And thank you for all of our HEB partners for joining us tonight. This was exciting, and we look forward to seeing more of you in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thanks, y'all. Have a great night.
Oh, there's Karen. Oh, look
at
you,
Karen with baby. Yay. Hello. Does
so
baby have a wine preference yet?
I hope not.
He's going to start swirling the glass, like imitating. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Very good. Yeah, thank y'all so much. Great to see everybody. I'll see y'all on the next one. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. And yay for dry January being over.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you for that. All right. Thanks,
Salud.
everyone. See you
Cheers,
next time.
everyone.
Bye.